Welcome to Industrial Timber, where horsepower meets deep mud, overloaded machines, field recoveries, old tractors, heavy skidders, and operators pushing equipment far beyond easy working conditions. Subscribe now for more real machinery, extreme recoveries, agricultural engineering, and raw off-road timber power. Watching highway-oriented vehicles try to survive Russian mud is something else entirely. These machines may look capable on hard roads, but deep wilderness terrain exposes every weakness fast. It is like watching a road vehicle step into a swamp and realize too late that pavement rules no longer apply. Out there, bad roads and bad decisions have a long history of defeating good engines. Then the mood shifts to the 2013 Quintantoli National Plowing Contest in Italy. Vintage tractors, roaring diesel engines, night plowing, smoke, crowds, and old-school agricultural pride turn the field into something close to motorsport. This is not just farming. This is mechanical history still alive, still loud, and still working under load. Then comes the obvious question. Why drive into terrain like that at all? The answer is brutal but practical. Under that waterhole is thick packed clay, and the field needs to drain within weeks. The surface has to be ripped open so the water can escape. Locals say that pit has trapped every kind of tractor over the years, not just one John Deere. At that point, it is basically a graveyard of horsepower. You can hear the operator talking about needing just a little more depth, but the machine cannot get enough traction. That is how field recoveries usually go. The tractor has the power, the engine has the torque. The problem is the ground refusing to give anything back. Once the tires stop biting, horsepower turns into noise. Then comes one of the smoothest recovery moments in the video. The front wheels lift clear off the ground, but the driver does not panic. Calm hands, steady throttle, and controlled balance keep the machine working instead of flipping the situation into chaos. That is not reckless driving. That is experience managing weight transfer in real time. Another operator follows with the kind of confidence that looks insane until you realize he knows exactly what the machine can take. Years of off-road work build that instinct. He reads the ground, feels the traction, and pushes just hard enough without letting the machine get away from him. Sometimes the solution is almost too simple. Install tire chains. Watching operators fight mud and slick ground without them, Makes you wonder why the equipment was not prepared from the start. In this kind of work, traction is not a bonus. It is the difference between moving and burying the machine. The video then lands on one of the most important lessons in agriculture and forestry work. Field preparation matters. That soil could barely support a pickup, let alone a 6,000-pound tractor. A dry-looking surface means nothing if the ground underneath is soft. The top layer may look safe, but the lower soil decides whether the machine moves or sinks. Then picture a tractor buried so deep in farmland it looks like the earth swallowed it whole. Not in a swamp, not deep in the forest, but right in the middle of a working field. The plow behind it weighs a ton, and once the tires lose traction, the machine has no chance of pulling itself free alone. Fortunately, the recovery team knows what they are doing. They use coordination, controlled pulling angles, steady pressure, and patience to bring the machine back out. No panic, no wild yanking, no useless chaos. Just experienced operators solving a heavy problem under pressure. Then somebody rolls in with a homemade tractor powered by a Pannonia engine. It looks like a backyard engineering experiment that went completely off the rails, but you still have to respect the creativity. It may be strange, rough, and probably questionable in several ways, but it proves one thing clearly: people will build a machine out of almost anything if they need work done. Then the Timberjack 380B enters the mud like a war machine. This is not just hauling logs. This is a fight against the terrain itself. Huge tires claw through sludge, articulated steering keeps correcting, and raw mechanical force drags timber through ground that wants to stop everything moving across it. Next comes the Craftsman GT6000. It is smaller, but it has that satisfying engine rumble people love. Some machines do not need massive horsepower to have character. Sometimes the sound alone tells you the machine has personality. Then someone attempts a stunt so reckless it should not be copied by anyone. Heavy equipment is not entertainment when safety disappears. One bad bounce, one wrong angle, or one failed part can turn a stunt into a serious accident instantly. After that, the scene becomes a full tractor tug-of-war. New Holland 7,260 versus Deutz, Far Agrotron 200. Tractor against tractor, torque against torque. Heavy frames, deep ruts, diesel power, and a crowd waiting to see which machine breaks traction first. This is raw pulling force turned into a contest. The next scene explains weight distribution perfectly. The front wheels lift while the machine tries to climb free, but the timber load behind the axle completely changes the balance. Sometimes power alone is useless if the load geometry is working against you. A strong tractor can still lose when the weight is placed wrong. Then the roles reverse. The machine that looked buried and helpless becomes the rescuer. Heavy towing, controlled traction, and steady pulling turn it into the hero of the recovery. That is the strange thing about field machines. One moment they are stuck. The next, they are saving something else. One scene gets tense when broken timber nearly destroys a rear tire. The operator gets lucky. One sharp edge in the wrong place, and that rim could have been shredded instantly. In timber work, hazards are not always big and obvious. Sometimes a single broken piece of wood can cause expensive damage. Still, the recovery becomes a strong demonstration of how skilled operators work out of impossible situations. Slow throttle control, tire management, leverage, patience, and clean positioning matter more than simply pulling harder. Recovery is not brute force, it is controlled force. Next up, Basok 75 horsepower versus New Holland in deep mud. The real problem is not horsepower. The Basok might have escaped with wider tires, but the narrow tires packed themselves full of mud until the tractor basically buried itself alive. Traction geometry beat engine power again. If you enjoy these old machines, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more real-world equipment action from around the globe. These are the machines people keep alive because they still work when conditions get ugly. Then one clip feels almost unreal, with a vehicle rolling downhill like it will never stop. Brakes locked, stuck in gear, completely out of control. Moments like that remind everyone how fast machinery becomes dangerous when traction disappears. Once a heavy machine starts sliding, the operator may have almost no options left. You would think a versatile 2425 could bulldoze through almost anything. Massive diesel power, heavy frame, enormous tires, and a build made for punishment. Yet there it sits, completely stuck. Nature gets the final word when the ground gives up beneath you. Then the field fights back again when a John Deere 9670 hopper sinks deep into mud. Once a machine that large loses flotation, recovery becomes delicate. Pull too hard, and something bends. Pull too fast, and something snaps. With equipment this heavy, the goal is not just getting it out. The goal is getting it out without destroying it. That is why pulling equipment free is never just about force. It is about angle, timing, patience, and damage control. Too much aggression can turn one stuck machine into 3 broken parts and a bigger repair bill. In recovery work, patience matters as much as horsepower. If this kind of real-world machinery action gets your attention, drop a 1-inch in the comments and subscribe to Industrial Timber. Your support keeps these heavy equipment stories rolling. Finally, when mud decides to fight back, operators bring chains, recovery rigs, and every bit of experience they have. One powerful tractor hooks onto a fully loaded truck buried in wet ground. Chains tighten, wheels spin, engines roar, and everyone waits for that final surge of traction. The crowd holds its breath because recoveries like this can go wrong instantly. One snapped chain, one bad pull angle, one overloaded tow point, and the whole job can turn dangerous. That is industrial timber. Horsepower, mud, recovery pressure, old iron, field engineering, and machines working where the ground itself becomes the enemy.